Hello mind mappers and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over Eat That Frog by Tracy. Now this book has been recommended probably more than any other book on this channel. It seems like you guys are big Tracy fans, and I'm a big Tracy fan as well, so I'm very happy to bring this one to you today. Now I pulled out a lot of really great tidbits from this book, but first let's start with an introduction to Tracy himself. Just for those of you who haven't heard of him or aren't familiar with his work, he's a chairman and CEO of Tracy International. He's consulted more than 1,000 companies, spoken to more than 5 million people in over 5,000 talks worldwide. Some of my favorite personal development concepts were originated or coined by Tracy himself. Now let's get into Eat That Frog. What are we going to learn inside this book? Well, a lot of things, but the first quote that I pulled out to illustrate what the book is all about to you is this. Throughout my career, I have found a simple truth. The ability to concentrate single-mindedly on your most important task, to do it well, and to finish it completely is the great key to success, achievement, respect, status, happiness in life. This key insight is the heart and soul of this book. So that's what this book is really all about. The key to success is action, and that's echoed in a lot of the personal development books that not only I've read, but also that we've done on this channel. These principles work to bring about fast, predictable improvements in performance and results. The faster you learn and apply them, the faster you will move ahead in your career, guaranteed. Some strong words. There will be no limit to what you can accomplish when you learn how to eat that frog. And if there's any Lord of the Rings fans out there, I think of this as the one key to rule them all. When it comes to personal development, most people will tell you that action is the one key to rule them all. And as I said, there's so many books out there that we've done on this channel that talk about action and how important action is. Now, taking action on the things that you read might be an example of something that you want to take action on. Taking action on the things that you say that you will do. Holding yourself accountable for those types of actions, taking actions on the things that other people are asking you for. All of those things are an example of taking action. And without action, all of these other gems like productivity and time management and self-belief and all of those different kind of gems that have come out of the personal development field really don't have very much as far as teeth go. Right? So they're not going to be very effective if you first don't know how to take massive action on them. But it's easy to forget action. It's easy to procrastinate, far too easy to procrastinate. And probably it's easier than ever. But the good news is that action happens to be affected by momentum. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in the mind map. But first things first, how to start gaining momentum and take massive action. That's what we want to learn from this book. I want you to watch this video, read this book, listen to the words that I'm telling you, and think, how can I learn to gain momentum and take massive action? Inside the book, there's 21 different tips, and I've only distilled just a few of them, the ones that are my favorites, but I recommend you pick up the book because it's well worth the read, as are all of Brian's books and a lot of his videos and his talks. Really, really great and insightful videos and talks. But with this video in particular, if you want to get the most out of these mind maps, you can do that by following along. You can find the process of how I mind map plus 50 plus mind map templates, including this one, all at the link down below. So following along is going to help you learn more, you're going to remember better, all by using these mind maps in particular in my mind mapping process. This is how you're going to best apply these books to your life. And really, it's how you're going to start taking action. So go check out that link down below. And without any further ado, let's get into our very first main idea, our very first big idea, which is taste. Now, it has been said for many years that if the first thing you do each morning is the first thing that you have to do each morning is to eat a live frog, you can go through the day with the satisfaction of knowing that it's probably the worst thing that's going to happen to you all day long. And your frog is technically your biggest, most important task, the one you're most likely to procrastinate on if you don't do something about it right now. It is also the one task that you can have the greatest impact on your life and results at the moment. Quite often, the things that we procrastinate on are the things that are going to have the biggest positive impact. And that's sometimes because they're very difficult, but also sometimes because we're afraid of that positive impact. It's a good little question to ask yourself about why you're procrastinating. Continuing on, he says, the key to reaching high levels of performance and productivity is for you to develop a lifelong habit of tackling your major task first thing each morning. You must develop the routine of eating your frog before you do anything else and without taking too much time to think about it. The too much time to think about it is something that we all struggle with. That's kind of the snowball effect of procrastination. Is if you say, you know what, I'll do that a little bit later, quite often a little bit later turns into a lot later. So what he's saying here in this quote is that a live frog is unlikely to taste good. Plus, it probably isn't going to go down easy. And what I want you to do is think about if you have any tasks like that, ones that you might rather put off until an imaginary tomorrow, something that you've been saying that you're going to do from the beginning of time and you just never ended up pulling it all the way through. Maybe it's the ones that you're not sure that you're even going to be successful with, or perhaps the ones that have been on your plate for weeks, months, or potentially even years. The one thing that I want to tell you is that you shouldn't worry because you're definitely not alone. Most of my coaching clients reach out because they've got one heck of a big ugly frog to eat and they're having trouble figuring out how to go through with it. They just want a little help getting the courage to at least sit down at the table and start the process. And what's Brian's advice on eating that frog? Well, first he says that we must resolve to eat the frog first thing in the morning when our willpower is the highest. Now, we've talked a lot about how willpower actually doesn't degrade throughout the day, and I think when Brian was writing this book, I think that was the major kind of philosophy as to how willpower worked, right? You have a lot of willpower in the morning and not as much at nighttime. Now, they've proven that that's not actually the truth, but for the sake of this book, we're going to continue to go through. And I think in practice, even though the studies are now showing that willpower doesn't degrade throughout the day, I think in practice, this is still a great practice for going through with some of the hard things that you might have to do in life. Second, he says that we would have more than one frog, that we should pick the ugliest and the most likely to make the others easier. So this is a concept that I really like how Gary Keller talks about in The One Thing. He says frogs are like dominoes, right? You pick the one that is going to make the next one the easiest to topple over. And I think that's a great way to go about it. Quite often, the one that's the easiest to make the rest topple over is the biggest and the ugliest frog, as Brian says here. So next we're going to talk about recipe. And I picked these words because I want them to stick out in your mind. When you go about when you go about using your imagination to recreate this map in your daily life, I want you to have something that's going to stick out. So that's why some of these words are a little weird. Clarity is the most important concept in personal productivity. The number one reason why some people get more work done faster is because they're absolutely clear about their goals and objectives, and they don't deviate from them. The more clear that you are about what you want and what you have to do to achieve it, the easier it is for you to overcome procrastination. Eat your frog and get on with it. A major reason for procrastination and lack of motivation is vagueness, confusion, and fuzzy-mindedness about what you were supposed to do and in what order and for what reason. You must avoid this common condition with all your strength by striving for even greater clarity in everything that you do. So the reason that I called this recipe is because frogs probably never taste great, but it probably tastes a heck of a lot better if at least you have a recipe for how to go about eating it. This is the perfect analogy for goals in my mind, because the things that you might want to do will never be easy, right? The things that you want to do that are going to be actually meaningful are going to take hard work and dedication. But with a good plan or a recipe, they're certain to be a little bit easier. Now, how do we set clear goals? Well, I like to use a system called objectives and key results. And this is how it works. It actually works really well with mind mapping. I'm thinking about coming out with a course about objectives and key results and how I use mind mapping for goal setting. So first, you must make a list of your main objectives. And I find having 3 to 5 per quarter is my main limit. And where I put my main objectives would be in these colored nodes of the mind map, just for those of you that are following along at home here. Objectives, they should be measurable, they should be time-based, and they should be reasonable to complete. Now, I like to set objectives that I'll be able to get about 70% of them for sure. And then the other ones, it's going to be a little bit of a stretch. That's the way that I like to set them. I can go more in detail in this in a course later. Second, below that main objective, you should list 3 to 5 key results that, if completed, would end up leading to that objective. So the key results shouldn't be too granular because they need to be wide-ranging enough to actually lead to the objective without needing you to have an exact step-by-step process of how you're going to achieve it. But they should also be measurable, and these are kind of essentially your recipe. These things should be simple things like go to the gym 5 times a week, or prepare a healthy meal on Sunday night. Let's say your objective was to get in better shape in this quarter. Which wouldn't be necessarily measurable enough, but you get the point. You would want these things to lead towards your objective, and I believe that's the best way to create the recipe. That'll help the frog go down a little bit easier. The next thing we're going to talk about is actually exercise. So this is a great exercise for you to do when you're going about trying to set goals. I don't agree with everything that Brian says in this part here as well, just based on some of the other books that I've read to you guys and based on the system that I'm using in my own life, but I'll tell you about his and then I'll tell you about mine. So first he says to take a clean sheet of paper right now and make a list of 10 goals that you want to accomplish in the next year. Write your goals as though this year has passed and they are now a reality. Use the present tense, positive, and first person, so they are immediately accepted by your subconscious mind. That's a great trick for writing goals. For example, you would write, I earn X number of dollars per year, or I weigh X number of pounds, or I drive such and such a car. And then go back over the list of 10 goals and select the one that, if you achieved it, would have the greatest positive impact on your life. Whatever that goal is, write it on a separate piece of paper, set a deadline, make a plan, take action on your plan, and then do something every single day that moves you towards this goal. This exercise alone could change your life. So this is a very good exercise, and I think it really illustrates how important that domino effect really is. The one thing is really, really important in goal setting. Like I said, I like to have 3 to 5 goals going at any different quarter, just because you might have one for, let's say, for example, you might have one for financial, you might have one for fitness, you might have one for relationships. You can focus on 3 of those things kind of at a time, right? Some maybe less high intensity goals in 3 different areas of your life. You could easily do it that way. So what a great exercise. Break your year down into about 10 goals. This is something I wish I had done at the very beginning of my life. Having clear direction of where I would want to go and would have allowed me to take better advantage of opportunities. But it also would have allowed me to say no to a lot more things. However, here's where I'm going to differ from Brian's advice just slightly. I find it more motivating and elucidating to write down these 10 goals instead of, let's say, for example, as one goal. I would want to write it down as a paragraph. Writing an essay to myself of where I am a year from now is just such a great tool when used in conjunction with the quarterly objectives and key results. Now, if I write down this paragraph, half sheet of paper of where I am a year from now, then it's going to be easy for me to pull out a couple of the key results that if I did them right now, everything else along the way is going to be a little bit easier. For example, let's say I had a big goal to make more money in my business. I had a big goal to be in better shape and go on more vacations and that sort of a thing. I had that kind of vision for my life. Now, what are the things that are going to make that I can do in quarter number 1 that are going to make quarter number 4 a little bit easier, right? So maybe the first thing that I focus on is my fitness, because the more fit I am, the more energy I'm going to have to be able to work hard in quarter number 2 and 3, hopefully paying off in quarter number 4. Something like that is the way that I would go about it. That's usually what I do with my coaching clients as well. It's very good to kind of 80-20 that first step. Here's a little bonus. Now, I kind of went through this a little bit here, right? So it's very important to know where I want to go, but I also find it, and positive psychology people will maybe kind of eschew this a little bit, but I find it very, very useful to not only have a carrot, but also have a stick. Not only have something that I'm aiming for, but also something that I'm working against. And I think human beings are motivated that way to a large degree. So I also like to write down a paragraph of where I could be if I really let myself go. This is something that I actually stole from Dr. Jordan Peterson. I think humans have the capacity to be motivated from two different directions. Now, don't do this if you're someone who is, innately kind of hard on yourself already, but it is something good for us, those of us that are maybe too optimistic or tend to procrastination a little bit more. Let's think about, one way. One way might be, what might we get if we have tried our hardest? What are all the things that, if we're able to put aside kind of the pleasures of the moment and work towards the long term, what are some of the things that we could accomplish? And then also on the kind of opposite side of that, what might we end up getting given we let ourselves slide into chaos and end up living more for the moment than we do for our long-term happiness? Now, it's pretty easy for us to see both sides of that, but it's going to be extremely difficult for you to continue to keep both in your mind to be motivated. It's a very good tool, but it is definitely a tool that takes some getting used to. So let's talk about Brian's crossing the desert story, a very interesting story. So many years ago, I crossed the heart of the Sahara Desert, the Tanzaruf, deep in modern-day Algeria. Sorry if I got that wrong and any of you live there. But the desert was 500 miles across in a single stretch without water, food, a blade of grass, or even a fly. It was totally flat, like broad, yellow sand parking lot that stretched to the horizon in all directions. To counter the lack of features in the terrain, the French had marked the tracks with black 55-gallon oil drums, 5 kilometers apart, exactly the distance to the horizon where the earth curved away as you crossed that flat wasteland. Because of this, wherever we were in the daytime, we could see 2 oil barrels, the one we had just passed and the one 5 kilometers ahead, and that was enough. All we had to do was steer towards the next oil barrel. As a result, we were simply able to cross the biggest desert in the world by simply taking it 1 oil barrel at a time. So, as we talked about actually before, when I talked about how I like to set only quarterly measurement goals, any large goal can end up being pretty overwhelming. Don't get me wrong, setting goals and having a plan is a great thing. All of that is very good. But often, and this is maybe more me speaking to me here, I can find myself overwhelmed by the sheer amount of stuff to do when pursuing that goal. Often, looking ahead towards the end can be quite discouraging. So, how can we solve this? Simple. We can set out oil barrels for ourselves and just focus on following them. This takes away the pressure of the larger goal and instead allows us to pull our focus on and attention on the next 5 kilometers. This isn't the key results we talked about before. Those might be 50-kilometer goals, or potentially they're even longer. Instead, these are the actions that we're going to be taking along the way. So for me, it kind of goes objectives. What are the key results that will lead to those objectives? And then what are the actions that I might have to take in order to accomplish those key results? So first, I take the key result that I want to work on and I'll break it down into some key actions. Next, I'll take those key actions and I organize them in the best way that I possibly can. I try and almost create a checklist with my mind map. I do objective, key results, all the possible actions that I can think of that might lead towards the accomplishment of that key result. After that, I shut off all the distractions and try and follow my next action only. And if I have to, I'll rearrange that's the beautiful thing about mind maps is I can rearrange the thoughts very easily and simply. I can rearrange the steps very easily and simply. And really, all I'm focusing on after that is the next oil barrel, right? I can recalibrate as soon as I finish that action and say, do I need to change the path? Do I not need to change the path? It's a beautiful way to get yourself to continue following just a small step ahead rather than trying to follow all the way till the very end. That's why I didn't necessarily love the exercise of setting 1 year-long goals. I think 1 year-long goals are quite far out. Those are maybe the full 500-kilometer desert. 1 year is quite a long time. So every great achievement of humankind has been preceded by a long period of hard, concentrated work until the job was done. Single-handling requires that once you begin a task, you keep working at it, without diversion or distraction, until the job is 100% complete. You keep urging yourself onward by repeating the words "back to work" over and over, whenever you are tempted to stop doing something and start doing something else. By concentrating single-mindedly on your most important task, you can reduce the time required to complete it by 50% or more. This is something that Cal Newport talks about in his book Deep Work, which should be linked down below. But he talks about how attention residue has such a large effect. If we're constantly switching back and forth from different tasks, it takes us significantly longer to get each of those tasks finished. Even though we might feel like we're getting them both done in half the time, that's simply just not how it works. Multitasking is a lie. The truth is that once you've decided on your number one task, anything else that you do other than that is relatively just a waste of time. So the process of focusing on a task focusing on the task at hand, is both liberating and extremely difficult. Most of the time, the human mind is quite distracted. It really loves distraction. Focusing either on the next task or thinking of new ideas for something completely different, it's an amazing feature of the human mind, and we all have so much creative potential, and I really do appreciate that. But it's not exactly how things really end up getting done. Great works take not only great work, but also a lot of discipline and concentration. Having that discipline frees you up to do your best work and liberates the best creations your mind thinks of almost every moment of the day, right? You can have these amazing ideas, but it's that discipline that's going to actually liberate them. So how do you cultivate that discipline? Well, Brian gives us the mantra of get back to work, and I think that's a great one. I also like, what am I avoiding right now, and why am I avoiding this? As it helps to get some insight into the causes and the reasons for our procrastination. I already shared that with you today, but I recommend that you pick it up. Try it out a couple times. If you're procrastinating on something, just ask, what am I avoiding right now, and why am I avoiding this? Don't necessarily wait for an answer, but if you get the answer, it might not be the one that you thought it was. One more thing I find useful is having the time in front of me when I'm working. This is a timer, actually. So when that timer is running, nothing but the work matters. All I need is the discipline to turn it on, and instantly the work starts flowing just a little bit easier. So I actually have an egg timer right in front of me when I'm doing my work. I'll turn it to 30 minutes, and as soon as that timer starts ticking, it's almost like it's a Pavlovian response for me. I immediately get to start working, and all the other things tend to just leave my attention. It's a really great way to keep myself focused. I recommend that you pick up one of those timers. Just a quick side note, I don't want to keep talking about this for too long, but I've tried internet timers, I've tried phone timers, I've tried so many different things. But the physical action of turning the egg on, hearing the clicking down, that's one of the things that actually made a huge difference for me. So I recommend you go pick up an egg timer anywhere that you might find one. The raw materials of personal performance. This is the final point, by the way. Of this, I actually think that these two black points are the most important ones. The recipe and the energy. These are the two most important points that I think you could pull out of this book. The raw material of personal performance and productivity is contained in your physical, mental, and emotional energies. One of the most important requirements for being happy and productive is for you to guard and nurture your energy levels at all times. Your body is like a machine that uses food, water, and rest to generate energy that when you use it, you can accomplish the most important tasks in your life and your work. When you're fully rested, you can get 2 times, 3 times, and even 5 times as much done as when you are tired. So this is the one thing that we can tend to forget about productivity, me in particular. At the end of the day, it all comes down to how we manage our energy. No matter how many different tips and tricks we use as far as productivity, time management, and motivation, we can only do so much in a day. So far, we've talked a lot about great things for the mind, right? For example, we talked about how to stop procrastination, set worthwhile goals, how to manage those goals with the key results, and how to manage next actions so you always know what you should be doing next. But we can't forget about the body, the source of our energy to do any and all of these wonderful things that we plan to do. Here's some more questions for you, right? What does your body need? Ask yourself that question right now. Well, it might need quality food, it might need water, it might need exercise, it might need rest, and we need to be listening to that body and giving it what it needs in order to be successful and in order to accomplish the important tasks and work of our lives. So, one more question that I'll leave you with. How are you managing your energy for yourself? And Are you willing to eat that frog is maybe another question that I would leave you with. But energy is very, very important, and I hope you guys are taking care of yours. Thanks so much for being with me here today, and I'll see you in the next one.